Welcome to the Virtual CPA Success Show, where we're 100% focused on helping service-based businesses achieve success. Are you a business owner interested in learning how to scale your business? Has your business reached over $1 million in annual revenue? Then this podcast is for you.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's podcast. This is one podcast that Jody is extremely excited about. That reason is because we finally found the one person that has read his book and enjoyed it and gave us a really positive review. So want to welcome to the show JD Graffam from Simple Focus. So welcome to the show, JD. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm a poet. Yep. Started an agency in 2009 called Simple Focus. I quit a job that I really liked. I've never actually not liked a job. It was a hard decision to leave a good job and good people. But anyway, I started the company in 2009 because I don't know, I believed in myself. I knew I could do it. There was no doubt in my mind. I was like, I got this. And in 2009, the economy was, can we cuss?
Oh yeah, there's no censors here.
It was total shit, right? It was,
yes, it was.
It was only slightly better than it is today. And I was like, if I can figure out how to run a business in this environment, in 10 years when things are better, I'll be able to mash the accelerator and do really well. That was the story I told myself. Anyway, I went through the process of figuring out what we wanted to do and when to hire and all that. And I kind of always just trusted that, hey, everybody charges $100 and something an hour. And mostly that works out. And so if we just do good work and keep ourselves busy feeling and try and charge $100 and something an hour, I bet the math works. Just sort of trust the process. And it did. There were days in the early days of Simple Focus when I was like, I don't know where the money's coming from. I got a payroll in 2 days. But we've been doing good work and we've been charging $100 something an hour. Surely this will work out. And literally the night before payroll hits, a check shows up in the mail for $6,000. And I'm able to make payroll by $50 and it worked, It hasn't always been tight. And I wasn't borrowing money or anything. I was just, kind of doing the math and taking money out of the business, to renovate a kitchen. But then I just paid a contractor to renovate my kitchen and now I'm tight on payroll. So figuring out that balance was tight when we were small and figuring it out. But I was getting by and I was trusting that we could, make it based on the fact that everybody charges, $120 to $150 an hour and they're doing fine, staying in business. So that must work. And so I just sort of really simplified it. And it's still true, right? But as the business has gotten more complex, the things in your book are just a more specific expression of what I started out doing.
Yep.
Right. So the math works.
Yeah.
Yep.
In a bigger business with 10, 15, 20 employees, as you grow, like I have over the years, we've been up to 25 employees inside of Simple Focus, the agency. I've got probably closer to 100 employees total now. But inside of my agency, the more complex it gets, the more I look at the stuff that I learned in your book and realize, oh, this is just the same thing. It's just more complex. Right? It's the same thing. Well, if you charge X and you have these sorts of things going on, it's going to work, And if this variable changes, well, this other stuff's got to change, Okay, cool. But that's still just math, adding and subtracting, multiplication and division. It's not like you got to do sine and cosine and tangent or whatever.
Right.
There's no square roots.
Yeah. This isn't calculus. It's just not that complicated once you know the rules and the inputs and the dials. But anyway, so I started a Simple Focus in 2009. Did good, had money piling up in sort of some little savings accounts and whatnot. and decided to take a modest sum of that and buy an app I bought a software company in 2012.
Mm-hmm.
That did really well. Bought another software company, kept running Simple Focus, was thinking, okay, well, we want to do apps like UI design and UX for Simple Focus. So like we'll tell people, look, we dog food, like we have our own software companies. We should do software design for you. It turns out that the types of people who had software companies like I was buying, they're insanely cheap. And they have this I can do it myself mentality. So that's not really a great strategy. It didn't work. I wasn't getting a bunch of indie software developers to let us redesign their UI and charge, $100 something an hour to do something they could do on their own. 80% is good, But I was doing really well on the software side, so I split them into two businesses. And around this time, I was like, Simple Focus was taking off, and we were getting corporate customers. And this is around the time I read your book.
Yep.
But lately, in the last 5 or 6 years, I've continued to acquire software companies. Over the years, I've bought other little agencies and rolled them into Simple Focus, or now I've got like a separate dedicated agency for content marketing. I founded and sold to my partner like a custom dev shop. Over the years, I've been in the staffing business. I've done all sorts of things, but the one constant has been my UX agency, which has performed well over the years. Now it's had some ups and downs, and that's one of the reasons we know each other is like,
yep,
your advice helped me get through the ups and downs, right? And so, yeah, that's my story. I run Simple Focus, or own Simple Focus. The day-to-day is kind of run by two guys, Matt and Patrick. But I own and operate like a portfolio of companies.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of cool.
And,
it sounds like,
and I write poetry.
And you write poetry stuff.
Yeah, your poetry. So you pretty much bootstrapped everything, is what it sounds like.
It certainly feels like I was bent over pulling my boots up the whole time. Yeah, like bending over and retying them constantly because I'm tripping on my bootlaces. But yeah, I have totally just figured it out along the way. And started with 5,000 in savings, to get Simple Focus off the ground and get the courage I needed to quit my job. My wife and I had more in savings, but I said, look, I want to deposit 5,000 in my business account and go. And that's what I did. And so, it's been great since then. I wouldn't go back and do it again because it's so hard and scary and stressful, but I'm glad I did it.
Yeah. So you say you wouldn't go back and do it again because of all that?
No, I mean, so people will ask me sometimes, would you go back and do it again? And I said, yeah, if I could go back and do it 10 years ago.
Yeah, and you knew
like, would I do it today? Start over today? No, but if I could say, yeah, I'd do it again 10 years ago, where that was 10 years in the past, absolutely. Because it's not easy.
No.
I mean, it's not easy because of the hours sometimes. It's not easy because of the tough decisions you got to make other times. When you make promises to people that you can help them, your team members, your employees, that you can help them make a living. And then one day you got to look up and things haven't been going right. And you got to tell them, hey, we can't do this anymore. You're on your own.
Yep.
And that fucking sucks. And
it's big time sucks.
Because you want to be able to do everything for everybody, but sometimes business is business and you just can't. And so that's tough because of what you have to put other people through. I'm certainly not going to whine about it. That's not, like, nobody wants to hear the person who has to let them go say, but this is so hard on me. Like, it's definitely hard on you, not me. Right. It just sucks because you develop relationships with people who didn't do anything wrong,
Right.
And you got to let them down, and then screws up their life. But then you look up a year later and they're making more money working somewhere cooler. So that's
the
awesome.
thing you have to remember. Yeah, I've done it so many times, and every time it's so hard. But then when you look at the backside of it, like, oh, okay, actually look at this person's doing really well, or they're maybe not making more money, but they're in a better place in terms of a better fit for them. And so I think that's both of us, all three of us, work in a service business, right? And so in a service business, the best part is that you get to work with people all the time. But sometimes the hard part is that you're working with people, and they are people, and you have to kind of think through, what's the impact on them and how are things going to work. And sometimes it's just easier to move on if the match isn't right. So want to talk about. It sounds like recently you've experienced a challenge that almost all agencies either go through or worry about going through. So I think this is a really good topic for our listeners, because if they haven't gone through this before, they are worrying about going through it or thinking about it might happen to them in the future. So let's kind of talk about what you're going through and kind of how you've started to work through it.
So at the beginning of 2022, we had a big customer that wanted to bubble up their contract with us really big. And so we worked with them to put that in place and grew the team to support it. And over 2022, they grew to about 60% of our revenue.
60%, 60.
Yeah. And it wasn't all, at once. At the beginning of the year, it was 25, 30%. And then in the middle of the year, it was like 70 or 80%. By the end of the year, it was 50 or 60%. But over the year, it was just a total of about 60% of our revenue.
Sure.
And maybe closer to 50% by the time December closed out. It's probably more accurate, but still half our business was coming from one customer. Now, this is scary the whole year long, but it was a fun ride. I mean, it wasn't that we did less work for everybody else. We were doing just as much work for everybody else. We grew to this. And so it was really exciting because we were getting to add awesome people to the team. We were getting to like optimize processes and like really streamline the business, and leaders were being, forged. Like people leveled up their careers at Simple Focus, over the course of the year, and really learn how to do things, hire the right people, put the right processes in place. And we're doing, cool enough work, right? I mean, it wasn't the coolest work for a big customer, but how many times is your biggest customer your coolest customer? So, we were okay with it. As the year dragged on, we looked up and they had a new CEO, and then we looked up and they had a whole new C-suite, and then we looked up and they were doing a layoff. I don't want to say the wrong number, but I think it was like 135 people in their corporate offices. And then we realized, hey, the people we're working with, we don't really have long-term relationships with, because we've worked with this customer for 8 years now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And,
so they're a big time anchor client.
They were consistently an anchor client. That was about 25% of our revenue. Sometimes less, sometimes a little bit more, but generally speaking, they were an anchor client. And we had relationships throughout their organization, kind of like a cancer, it would be hard to extract. But we looked up and they had sort of, cut off the arm and cut out the liver, and there's no cancer left. We're not like a cancer anymore. We can be removed. And we started hearing rumors that might happen. And so ultimately it did happen by the end of the year. One of the things I want to be very deliberate about getting across to anybody listening is we never had hard feelings about it. We had to make some tough decisions because of this, but the people we worked with, they treated us with respect. We liked them, mutual admiration, et cetera, et cetera. The work wasn't the most rewarding, but we did get to do cool work sometimes, and sometimes it was rewarding. We feel like we did get a chance over the years to make a difference in their business. But anyway, the decision came down, rumor mill started swirling, and we heard, you guys are going to be out. And everything's going to go to one agency, with a new leadership team in place. They were bringing in their people. We're like, but we're good people, maybe you don't understand what we do exactly. We would love to stay and help out in complementary ways. We tried everything. And the funny thing is they had this agreement with us to like spend a bunch of money in 2022 that never got signed. And I think it
Oh,
didn't get, yeah, I don't think it got unintentionally not signed early on. I think early on in the year, it was like some just dysfunction that is normal in a corporate environment. Like, somebody left,
mhm.
and it didn't get signed. And then it was like, well, hold on, we haven't really talked about this. And it was like, hey, what's the status on this? I don't know. Let me go find out. And like, we didn't hear back for a month, and the next thing you know, we're 6 months in and we don't have a signed agreement for this big old contract. And now it's starting to
Dang.
get, now the foundation's getting shaky.
And I'm a little scared.
Mhm.
You're scared of losing all the money, but here's the thing that like didn't scare us the whole time.
Mhm.
We knew our numbers because for the last 3 or 4 years, we've been implementing the Jody Grundon method. It started out as your thing. We sort of morphed it into our own thing, but like
Yeah, sure.
we have a monthly meeting where we look at utilization, all the KPIs, like actual billable rate. We created one. I don't know if you have theoretical revenue generated,
Mhm.
right? So we have a metric that we look at that's like, here's how much we think we're going to make in the future based on the work we've done.
Mhm.
Hmm.
I mean, further out in front of that, more in the future would be like pipeline, right?
Yep.
So you've got pipeline, then you've got theoretical revenue generated. So, you know, how much money in theory did we produce this month, right? Then we've got deposits, cash deposits, which is like, how are we doing right now? And
Yep.
then we've got, rearview mirror called ABR. So when a project closes and it's done, what do we actually bill per hour? How
Mhm.
effective were we, right?
Yep.
Hmm.
And one thing we do different than you, Jody, is because of the way we bill. I remember reading in your book that the goal is for your ABR to approach your stated rate.
Yep.
So if you state a rate of $200 an hour and your ABR is like 178 and then it's 185 and then it's 186, you're improving, you're getting closer to your stated rate. That's great. Like
Mhm.
our ABR very often comes in over our stated rate
Oh,
Nice.
because of the way we
Nice.
structure the deals, right? So if we have a fixed fee project, we have to like create a stated rate of, let's just call it, $200 an hour. This is what we
Mhm.
budgeted for, even though the
Yep.
client's not necessarily paying that, right? And we'll come in at 250 or 280 or 320 or 450 sometimes. It just depends. And so our ABR, I think, has creeped up from when we started doing this 3 or 4 years ago from like the 150s. I think it was 207.
wow.
So we have an ABR of 207, and our stated rate is closer to 175.
Wow.
Nice. Nice.
So anyway, we were never scared like everything was going to like come apart at the seams. But having a little bit of fear keeps you on your toes and keeps you in a
Mhm.
prone position, ready to jump on opportunities and fight, to not lose business. And so
Mhm.
we had a little bit of fear and concern about losing such a large customer. And we had anxiety and worries about letting the team down because we had hired up for it, right?
Mhm. Yep.
Um, but we knew all along this was a possibility. And everybody on the team received, consistent and transparent communication,
Mhm.
about, hey, we got this big customer and we got some shaky news. So just FYI, if that happens, you can't just lose half your revenue and not
Right.
have the
Right.
team.
Mhm.
Well, the decision came down and there was a little bit of work left to do. And so we looked at the team and just kind of analyzed the numbers. And part of it was just putting people into spreadsheets and seeing what numbers were. Part of it was looking at what's the composition of the team that we need go forward for the type of work we want to be doing next year. And part of it was, about the people and, where the fit might be long term for somebody beyond this. And you balance all that together and you mix it up and you kind of, at the end of the day, you make decisions you hope are the least wrong.
Yep.
And you go in and you know that, it's going to hurt people. It's going to mess people up financially, potentially. And you do what you can from a business perspective in terms of severance. You can't do more than you can do, but you certainly should do all you can do. And so we put that together and ran the numbers and said, okay, here we are. And, we've been through that. And what's different is that it's tough and it affects everybody. But we had been through this 4 or 5 years ago, which is why I got into your book and looking at the numbers. Except 4 or 5 years ago, we were like, hey, maybe if we pray, we can find clients to replace this big customer that went away. Maybe if we call up old clients and we just send them an email and say, hey, you got any work for us? We've got some unprecedented openings in our capacity. That doesn't work, because if you're going to replace a big customer, the life cycle on closing a deal like that is 6, 12, 18, 24 months,
Right.
You just do that.
That's what I find the most interesting about your story is I think the fact that they were only 60% of your revenue for less than 12 months makes it really hard to prepare for it, right? I worked with a client for a long time where they had that problem. They had one client that was a majority of their revenue, but we constantly every month talked about, okay, we need to find the second client that's the same size. But with 12 months, like you said, that's the amount of time it's going to take to close that next deal. If they're only going to be there for less than 12 months or 10 months, then it's just not going to give you enough time to find that second big fish to really help you increase or decrease your leverage, which is the scary part there.
Right. Well, the cool thing about this customer on the way out was, despite that everybody on their end was put in a situation of having this verbal agreement that never got signed, right? We had an advocate or two on the inside who were like, hey, yeah, but we did promise these guys. So can we just, finish out their this verbal agreement that we had with them that, they did hire up for us, which we did. And, if they didn't finish out the contract, we wouldn't have had any profit from it. We would have walked away, maybe break even on the year from scaling up this operation, but with paying out some severance and the overhead and all of that, they could have really screwed us. And to their credit, they were able to let us finish out the year and finish the work, the amount of work that they had promised that we could finish. And so that was really cool. Like I said, the whole time, we never had a chip on our shoulder about the fact that they were making this decision for their business.
Right.
That is what it is, right? That's, the game is the game, and we love the game. It's, it goes to show that you build strong relationships with people and you take care of them over the years. They're going to do what they can to help you out. But, 5 years ago when we went through this, we weren't able to make the decision right away. We didn't have our finger on the pulse of the money was coming in from the big client. Then the big client went away and there was still money there. And I was like, well, let's just see how long we can hold on. And the next thing I knew, I had dug a hole and I was in almost $1 million in debt. Fuck. How am I going to fix that?
No. Yeah.
The SBA, that's how you fix that. And so we've been slowly climbing out of that hole since then, right? So I took a 7-year note. I got a couple years left on it, but it's totally a manageable thing now. And but back 5 years ago, we just kept hoping that somebody would come along and save the day like they always had. Because remember in the early days, I was like, if you charge this and you stay busy, things take care of themselves. But when you get more complex and you take one on the chin, if you don't make changes, things don't take care of themselves.
Yep.
And so I found myself after 6 months in a deep hole, and I was like, shit, I'm running out of places to borrow money from. And so we didn't really have a choice. And the business did not allow to do as good of a severance the last time. And it was 6 months, it was 6 or maybe 7 or 8 months after the fact, right? Like we should have made the tough decision 6, 7 months prior, but we dug a hole for 6 months before, we got the nerve to like sort of call it a failure. And so then we made that choice way too late in the game. I was in a financial hole, made a commitment to myself that we will know our numbers going forward so that we don't do this to the team, because the cut back then was much bigger because it was too late. It was 6 months too late, This year the cut was not as big. And we were able to do it sooner, which is, on one hand, somebody might look at it and say, God, that's ruthless and cold. Like, it's all about money. It ain't about money. I'm not going to put myself in $1 million of debt again. Just that's not good for the company. That doesn't, motivate me to make this company exist. And it's a cool place to work when things are rocking and rolling. So let's do what we can to take care of everybody the best we can, and let's move forward and focus on what we can control and enjoy our work. I mean, because we're here because we enjoy the work, we enjoy the game, like I said. And so small business can be stressful in times like these, but man, small business can be fucking cool when it's cool.
Yeah,
like
JD,
our corporate customers are like so jealous of our lifestyle, like,
Yeah. You've said a lot of different things there. I think the biggest thing that I took out of that whole thing is just simply having transparency in the numbers and really being able to managing those numbers. Transparency in the numbers, meaning you're letting your team know how things are going. You're letting your team know how things are going with the client. You're giving that awareness to the team, but you've got a good handle on the modeling part of how your business actually runs. That when you made the decision years ago, it was an emotional decision. 5 years ago, completely emotional. I can handle this. I can figure this out. We're going to dip in. This time, it wasn't an emotional decision. It was more of a knowledgeable decision. You had the knowledge. You were able to to tell yourself, hey, based on what we know, here's our runway. Here's our cash runway. Here's what we have to do. Here's what we have to actually cut now because we lost this big client. And you took all the emotion out of it, which is really tough as a business owner, because those people mean so much to you and I as a business owner, that it's a tough thing, but it's one of those things you have to do, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to do what you did the last time, keep them on for a long time. Morale starts getting bad. Money's not there. And then you make this sweeping change, which you're eliminating a ton of people that you probably didn't need to do had you reacted quicker, I guess. So I commend you a ton, because it's a tough decision to make, and it's a great foundation to learn from, is just knowing your numbers so that you can actually then manage your company the way that it should be managed.
One of the things I want to point out, give credit where credit's due, is the leadership at Simple Focus really stepped up over the last 4 or 5 years and has taken accountability for knowing the numbers, and helping to make these decisions along the way. And they still come to me and we consult and we talk about it. And I sort of serve as the more financial minded, hey, here's the facts, you guys got the numbers for me, but look at them. I'm going to advocate for the numbers. You guys advocate for the culture. You guys advocate for the operations and our ability to deliver. Yep. And everybody's representing different parts of the business that need to be represented in a debate about, reduction in force. And ultimately we come to the decision, collectively that feels the least icky and that feels like this is the best decision for the business. And we make it. And but having a strong leadership team in place that understands the numbers and understands the values and has been there alongside me the whole way, that's been like one of the most wonderful things in the world, to work with them over the years and develop, help them develop into those leaders. Yeah,
I think Jody did a nice summary there, and as I was listening to your story, I was taking away very similar things. And as I was thinking through it, it's as you told the story, there's 2 things you did consciously but you did them well ahead of any problem, right? So the first one is, like Jody said, you had the planning in place. You had the planning in place. So when something happened, you were able to make quick decisions and act on those decisions. And that was something you've consciously done for however long because you've made that mistake before. So that's number one. And Jody kind of expanded on that. To me, the other one was you had that good relationship. You had that strong relationship with the client. And that's probably what you do with all of your clients is you had that strong relationship. You had the connection. And they were, like you said, it was a deep connection. It wasn't just with one person. It was with multiple people. So when things got a little sticky where, there's not a signed contract here, they could totally screw us. Luckily, they didn't because you had that strong relationship. And again, that wasn't something that you can decide to do of, this client's walking away. It's time to get that good relationship with them. No, you had to do that way ahead of time. And I think that's really what business is about a lot of times is the things you do every day and the things that make you your business are the things that are going to end up paying off in the long run. So that's definitely what I took from your story is those two things that you probably do with every client and that you do with your business every day are the things that end up paying off for you when it comes to these tough times to make this tough time a little less tough. So with that said, I know Jody kind of gave his thoughts there. We're getting close on time here, JD. So I wanted to give you one last chance, kind of final thoughts for our listeners. Again, loved your story, thought it was really helpful, but any final thoughts that can help our listeners out?
Man, I would just encourage my my business owner homies out there that are listening to this to figure out your numbers, figure out what works for your business, and check in on them regularly. Our check-in on our monthly metrics is once a month. Takes about an hour. It took us probably 2 years to dial in the formulas and figure out what we wanted to see when we looked at theoretical revenue generated.
Yeah, and the fact that you understand the numbers, I think, like I said, helped you make the decisions that the tough decisions and make them quickly, which is the important thing of knowing everything.
Yep.
Yeah, appreciate you sharing that.
Yep, definitely. All right, well, definitely thanks for joining the show and appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much. I'm happy we did this.
Yep.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, JD.
Bye.
All right.
Enjoy this podcast? Visit our website at summitcpa.net to get more tips and strategies for achieving business success. We're here to be a resource in this ever-changing industry.